The alien craft descended silently, its sleek metallic surface reflecting the dim glow of the moonlight. Deep within the wilderness, a small, weathered cabin stood isolated amidst the towering pines. Inside, Jack Callahan sat in a worn armchair, his gnarled hands resting on the arms, a steaming mug of tea beside him. The air was calm, the quiet only broken by the occasional crackle of the fire. Without warning, the room was flooded with an unnatural, pale blue light. Jack blinked, the light glinting off his sharp, clear eyes. There was no panic in him, just an almost bored acknowledgement of what he already suspected. The light intensified, and before he could take another sip of his tea, he vanished. Aboard the alien vessel, the air was sterile and cold. Jack materialized in the middle of a circular chamber. His captors, tall, sinewy creatures with elongated heads and luminous, pupilless eyes, stared at him from behind translucent panels. Their appearance was intimidating, their technology advanced beyond anything most humans could fathom. Yet Jack stood casually, his hands resting in his coat pockets, as if he were waiting for a bus. One alien stepped forward, its voice resonating both in the room and directly in Jack's mind. Human subject identified, anomalous energy signatures detected. You will explain your origin and abilities. The words were emotionless, clinical. Jack tilted his head slightly, studying the creature. Well, that's a hell of an introduction. You always greet guests like this. His voice carried a calm sarcasm that seemed entirely out of place in the situation. The alien hesitated, clearly unaccustomed to such a response. It leaned closer, inspecting him with its glowing eyes. You will comply, it repeated, the tone edged with something close to irritation. Jack sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. Look, I don't know what you think you're going to get out of this, but I'm telling you now, you're not going to like where this ends. The aliens exchanged brief, silent glances, their movements unnervingly synchronized. One tapped a series of holographic controls, and a beam of light scanned Jack from head to toe. The results displayed on a nearby screen caused a ripple of what might have been confusion or alarm. Jack smirked faintly. Yeah, I thought so. Didn't expect that, did you? The lead alien's voice returned, this time sharper. Explain the energy fluctuations surrounding your body. They are inconsistent with known human biology or technology. Jack raised an eyebrow, glancing at the screen. Ah, you found that. Well, that's classified. Can't go spilling all my secrets now, can I? The aliens were clearly growing impatient. The lights in the chamber dimmed slightly, and the atmosphere grew heavier. Another alien, standing at a console, muttered something in their guttural language. Jack pretended not to notice, but mentally catalogued every detail. You will cooperate, the leader insisted, stepping closer. Or we will extract the information by force. Jack chuckled softly, shaking his head. You lot really don't listen, do you? I'm trying to be nice here. But hey, go ahead, see what happens. The leader made a sharp gesture, and the air around Jack shimmered. A containment field encased him, buzzing faintly with energy. Jack didn't flinch. He simply looked at the barrier, then back at the aliens.
Cute trick, he said.
You've done this before, haven't you? Picking up little creatures, poking and prodding, feeling all high and mighty. But here's the thing, you've bitten off more than you can chew this time. One alien slammed a fist on the console, clearly agitated. The leader remained stoic, though the tension in the room was palpable. We will determine your nature, it said firmly. Jack gave a slow nod, his expression almost pitying. Sure you will. Just don't say I didn't warn you. The containment field intensified, the buzzing growing louder. Jack stood perfectly still, his eyes narrowing slightly. A faint ripple of energy passed through the chamber, almost imperceptible but enough to make the alien monitors flicker momentarily. The aliens froze, their focus shifting briefly to the systems around them. Jack's voice cut through the silence. You're playing with fire, boys. Hope you're ready to get burned. The chamber was stark and metallic, filled with the hum of alien machinery and the faint glow of unfamiliar symbols flashing on the walls. Jack sat in a single chair at the center of the room, restrained by what appeared to be energy bands locking his wrists and ankles. Despite the situation, he wore an expression of mild curiosity, his eyes darting around to study the alien technology. The leader of the Zerath, Commander Volax, stood before him, flanked by two other aliens. Volax's voice rang out, cold and deliberate. "You will provide answers, human. The anomaly surrounding you is an unquantifiable risk. Cooperation is your only logical choice." Jack leaned back as much as the restraints allowed, his face calm but his tone tinged with amusement. "You keep saying that like it's going to scare me into talking. Hate to break it to you, but this isn't my first rodeo." One of the other aliens stepped forward, clearly frustrated. Its elongated fingers moved across a holographic console, and a series of holograms appeared around Jack, displaying streams of data. "Your physiology shows irregularities," the alien said, its voice sharp. "Explain how a human generates this level of electromagnetic distortion." Jack raised an eyebrow at the holograms, but didn't respond immediately. His silence only seemed to agitate the aliens further. Volax stepped closer, his glowing eyes narrowing. "We can extract the information by force, if necessary," he warned. Jack sighed, shaking his head slowly. "You aliens really love your threats, don't you? All bark, no bite. You don't even understand what you're dealing with, do you?" Volax tilted his head, the glowing lines on his face shifting slightly. "We are the Zerath. We have cataloged thousands of species across the galaxy. There is nothing beyond our comprehension." Jack chuckled softly. "Thousands, huh? Impressive. But here's the thing, you've never met a species like mine. And trust me, we're full of surprises." The holographic displays shifted, showing detailed scans of Jack's body. One alien gestured to a section of the display. "Commander, the energy readings are unstable. They increase in response to external stimuli." Volax turned back to Jack, his voice sharp. "You are a danger to this vessel. Explain your abilities, or we will neutralize the threat." Jack gave a slow, deliberate smile. "Neutralize me? Go ahead and try. I'll even make it easy for you." Volax hesitated for a moment, then gestured to the alien at the console. The restraints around Jack tightened, the energy bands glowing brighter. Jack winced slightly, but maintained his composure. "You're wasting your time," he said calmly. "All this fancy tech, all these big threats, it's not going to work. You think you're in control, but you're not." The alien at the console looked up suddenly, its luminous eyes wide. "Commander, there's interference in the system. Power fluctuations across multiple decks." Volax's gaze snapped to the alien. "What is causing it?" The alien's fingers flew across the console, pulling up diagnostic screens. "Unknown." The anomalies matched the energy signature of the human. Jack tilted his head, feigning surprise.
"Huh.
That's interesting. Wonder how that happened." Volax turned back to him, his tone icy. "What are you doing to this vessel?" Jack shrugged.
Me?
"Nothing. Just sitting here, enjoying the show. But if I were you, I'd start checking those systems before things get out of hand." The power fluctuations grew more pronounced, the lights flickering intermittently. The humming of the machinery became erratic, and the holographic displays distorted momentarily before stabilizing. The aliens exchanged uneasy glances, their calm facade beginning to crack. One of them stepped closer to Volax, speaking in their guttural language. Volax nodded, then turned back to Jack. "You will cease whatever interference you are causing."
Now?
Jack smiled faintly. "You still don't get it, do you? I'm not causing anything. This is your ship reacting to me. It's like introducing a virus to a system that isn't prepared for it. And trust me, I haven't even started yet." The alien at the console looked up again, its voice urgent. "Commander, the primary systems are destabilizing. We need to contain the human immediately." Volax glared at Jack. "You are testing the limits of our patience, human. If you continue this, you will face consequences beyond your understanding." Jack's expression turned serious, his voice dropping to a calm but chilling tone. "I already told you, Commander. You're in over your head. If you had any sense, you'd cut your losses and let me go." But no, you had to poke the bear. And now, you're going to see what happens when the bear bites back. The lights in the chamber dimmed further, and the hum of the ship grew louder, almost as if it were groaning under some unseen pressure. Jack's calm demeanor remained, but the tension in the room was palpable. "Last chance," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Let me go, and I'll leave your ship intact. Push me any further, and you won't like the outcome." Volax hesitated, clearly torn between his pride and the growing threat. The aliens at the consoles were frantic now, their movements becoming more erratic as they tried to stabilize the systems. Jack leaned forward slightly, his restraints flickering faintly as the energy around them destabilized. "Your move, Commander." The ship's corridors pulsed with an uneasy energy, the lights flickering as the systems struggled to stabilize. Jack remained seated in the containment chamber, but the restraints around his wrists and ankles were visibly destabilizing. The once unyielding energy bands now shimmered erratically, occasionally sparking as though they were fighting against an invisible force. Across the room, Commander Volax barked orders to his crew in their guttural language. The aliens moved with heightened urgency, their luminous eyes darting between flickering holographic displays. The hum of the ship's core was louder now, a low, ominous vibration that resonated throughout the vessel. "You're losing control," Jack said, his voice calm, yet cutting through the chaos like a knife. He leaned back slightly, watching the panic unfold. "All that advanced tech, and you didn't think to plan for a little unpredictability. Typical?" Volax turned toward him, his expression as rigid as ever, though the tension in his glowing eyes betrayed him. "You are causing this. Whatever you are doing, it will end now." Jack tilted his head, his lips curling into a faint smile. "You really don't get it, do you? This isn't something I'm doing. This is something I am. You brought me here, and now your precious ship is reacting to me like an immune system attacking a virus." One of the Zerath technicians at the console shouted something in their native tongue, drawing Volax's attention. The holograms displayed a series of cascading failures: power systems, navigation, life support. Jack glanced at the screens, his smile widening. "Looks like you're having a bad day," he quipped. Volax slammed a hand down on the console, silencing the technician's frantic report. "Enough," he growled, turning back to Jack. "You will comply, or I will destroy you and everything connected to this anomaly." Jack's eyes narrowed, the faintest hint of irritation flickering across his face. "Destroy me? Oh, that's rich. Let me show you just how wrong you are." Without warning, the restraints around Jack's wrists and ankles collapsed in a cascade of sparks. He rose slowly, rolling his shoulders as if he'd just woken from a nap. The energy in the room shifted, a palpable pressure building as if the air itself had turned electric. The Zerath soldiers in the room instinctively stepped back, their glowing eyes widening as Jack's presence seemed to fill the space, larger and more imposing than before. He took a single step forward, and the hum of the ship's systems grew louder, more erratic. "See, the thing about humans," Jack said, his voice low and steady, "is that we're not what you think we are. You see us as weak, primitive, easy to control. But we have a knack for adapting, for understanding things we're not supposed to. And sometimes, we figure out how to turn your own toys against you." Volax raised a hand, signaling his soldiers. Two of them stepped forward, their weapons trained on Jack. Before they could fire, the lights in the room flared blindingly bright, and their weapons fizzled out, the energy cores sparking uselessly. Jack chuckled softly, shaking his head. "You should have listened when I told you to stop." The ship lurched violently, throwing several of the Zerath off balance. Jack remained steady, his eyes fixed on Volax. The commander stared back, his stoic demeanor cracking as the realization of the situation began to set in. "All those thousands of species you've cataloged," Jack continued, taking another step forward. "How many of them fought back? How many of them pushed you to the edge, made you question your superiority?" "I'm guessing not many." Volax straightened, his voice cold but tinged with uncertainty. "You are one individual. This ship contains the might of the Zerath Empire. You cannot stand against it." Jack stopped, standing mere feet from the commander. He raised a hand, and the lights in the room dimmed further, the hum of the ship reaching a deafening crescendo. The walls themselves seemed to vibrate with the raw energy emanating from him. "You think this is just about me?" Jack said, his voice carrying a weight that silenced the room. "You think I'm some anomaly, some fluke? I'm just the tip of the iceberg. Humanity has been watching, learning, growing. And if this is what I can do on my own, imagine what happens when the rest of us get involved." The lights flickered again, and the room was plunged into momentary darkness. When the lights returned, Jack was holding a small device, one that had clearly not been there before. It pulsed with an otherworldly glow, its design both alien and unmistakably human. "I didn't come here unprepared," he said, holding the device up for Volax to see. "This little gadget? It's something I whipped up a while back, just in case I ran into folks like you. It's tuned to your systems, your energy fields. Think of it as a universal off switch." Volax took an involuntary step back, his composure crumbling. "You're bluffing," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Jack smiled, pressing a button on the device. Instantly, the hum of the ship ceased, replaced by an eerie silence. The lights dimmed, the holograms vanished, and the air grew unnaturally still. The Zerath soldiers looked around in panic, their weapons lifeless in their hands. "Does that feel like a bluff to you?" Jack asked, his tone almost casual. Volax's glowing eyes darted to the malfunctioning consoles, then back to Jack. "You will not leave this vessel alive," he snarled, desperation creeping into his voice. Jack leaned closer, his eyes locked on the commander's.
"Funny.
I was about to say the same thing to you." The ship hung in silence, its systems completely offline. The usual hum of machinery was replaced by the unsettling quiet of helplessness. Jack stood amidst the chaos, the device in his hand glowing faintly, its energy pulsating in rhythm with the tension in the room. The aliens around him were frozen, their expressions a mix of fear and disbelief. "You're starting to get it now, aren't you?" Jack said, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, almost conversational, but there was an edge to it that made even the stoic Volax flinch. "You've been running around the galaxy, thinking you're untouchable, that nothing could stand in your way. But here we are." Volax straightened, his pride wrestling with the growing panic in his eyes. "You've only delayed the inevitable," he said, though the conviction in his voice was weak. "Our empire will recover. You are one man, one anomaly. This changes nothing." Jack smirked, shaking his head. "That's where you're wrong. This changes everything. Because now you've got a choice to make. You can keep pretending you're in control, or you can accept the fact that you've already lost." The commander stepped forward, his movements deliberate, though there was a hesitation that hadn't been there before. "You underestimate the Zerath. We are more than this ship, more than this crew. You cannot challenge the weight of an empire." Jack's expression hardened. "I'm not here to challenge your empire. I'm here to send a message. You're not as invincible as you think. And if you keep pushing, you're going to find out just how fragile you really are." The room remained tense, the aliens watching their leader for guidance. Volax hesitated, glancing at the device in Jack's hand, then at the lifeless systems around him. For the first time, doubt clouded his sharp features. "What do you want?" he finally asked, his tone quieter, edged with reluctant respect. Jack tilted his head slightly, considering the question. "I want you to leave Earth alone. No more abductions, no more experiments, no more interference. You go your way, we go ours. And if I hear even a whisper that you've broken that deal," he held up the device, its glow intensifying briefly. "Well, let's just say this was the polite version of what I'm capable of." Volax's jaw tightened, his pride warring with the undeniable reality of his situation. He glanced at his crew, then back at Jack. "You expect us to simply withdraw? To abandon our research?" Jack's gaze was unyielding. "I'm not asking. I'm telling. You crossed a line when you took me. And if you don't want to find out just how far I'm willing to go, you'll stay as far from Earth as your little empire can manage." The lights in the chamber flickered faintly, a weak attempt by the ship to regain power. Jack noticed, his smile returning. "See? Your ship's trying to come back online. That's good. It means you've still got a chance to fix this. Don't waste it. Volax remained silent, the weight of the decision bearing down on him. Finally, he nodded, a sharp, reluctant movement. Very well. The Zerath will leave your planet untouched. But know this, our patience is not infinite. If your kind steps beyond your boundaries, there will be consequences. Jack chuckled softly, lowering the device. Fair enough. But here's a little tip. If you ever come knocking again, you might find out we've stepped a lot further than you think. The ship's systems began to hum faintly, the lights stabilizing as power returned. The tension in the room eased slightly, though the Zerath soldiers still regarded Jack with a mix of fear and awe. Jack turned toward the nearest console, tapping a few buttons with surprising ease. A shimmering portal of light appeared in the center of the room, crackling softly. He glanced over his shoulder at Volax. This'll take me back home. You might want to make sure no one follows. I'm not in the mood to repeat this conversation. Volax said nothing, his glowing eyes fixed on Jack as he stepped toward the portal. Just before entering, Jack paused, looking back at the aliens one last time. Remember what I said, he warned, his tone carrying a finality that sent a shiver through the room. Stay away from Earth. This is your one and only warning. Without another word, he stepped into the portal, vanishing in a flash of light. The room was left in silence, once more, the hum of the ship's systems gradually returning to normal. Volax stood motionless, his mind racing. The Zerath had faced countless challenges in their conquest of the stars, but this was different. The human had been right. He wasn't just a threat. He was a reminder that even the mightiest could fall. As the ship's systems fully recovered, Volax turned to his crew, his voice firm but quieter than before. Set a course away from this system, and ensure that all records of this incident are classified. No one outside this ship is to know what happened here. The crew nodded, their movements subdued. The ship began to move, its course shifting away from Earth. For the first time in centuries, the Zerath had been forced to retreat, not by an army, but by one man. And in the vastness of space, Jack Callahan walked back into his cabin as if nothing had happened, the faintest smile on his lips. He knew the Zerath wouldn't forget him. But he also knew they'd think twice before ever setting foot near Earth again.